Hello everyone, welcome back to Wheels Up Live. I'm IAD Bound, and we are back for tutorial number 4 in the PMDG 777. And our focus today, as I mentioned at the end of tutorial 3, we will be doing the CDU pre-flight procedure. Now, CDU is Control Display Unit, and that is this. Okay, what they also often refer to as the box. There are 3 units in the 777, but the 2 that we'll normally be using would be the captain and the first officer units. Now, we are going to approach this task in the Boeing way. Now, the CDU is also sometimes called the FMC, the FMS, the box. There's a bunch of names. Yeah, okay, maybe there's not a bunch, but you get the gist. If you're coming from the Airbus side, you might say, isn't this the McDo? Because that's a multi-function control display unit. And in fact, it sort of is a multi-function display unit, but that's neither here nor there. Neither here nor there. It's a CDU for our purposes. The thing that you're going to be working with is the Flight Management Computer, FMC. The FMC is part of the FMS, the Flight Management System, but the FMC is sort of the heart of it, if you will. We will be entering a flight plan today. As I mentioned in the previous video, we'll be going San Francisco to Denver. We're going to enter the flight plan. Break. We're going to enter the flight plan manually, but we're also going to enter the flight plan using PMDG's available automation, which you can access if you have a SimBrief account, which is free. Okay. So let's take a look at what would happen at this point. And we're just going to walk through it. So before anything happens with your flight plan, the first thing you need to do is come to the CDU and just make sure that you can see it, because it is possible to adjust the brightness. And it could be, down very low. Maybe you're not seeing it, although I think it's always on at least a little bit once you've got power on the bus, whether that's external power or APU. I think even with the battery on, you get one FMC working, but keep in mind you can drain the battery. All right, so the way to get into this is to start at the beginning, and we can see here there are keys down the left-hand side, keys down the right-hand side, function keys, letter keys, number keys, some additional function keys. What we typically think about there is these are line select keys, LSK. So you'll see like 1L, which is top one, line 1 on the left, 2L, 1R, 2R, etc. Okay, so we're going to come up here to 1L on our line select key, and we will hit FMC. And the first thing that happens is you are presented with the IDENT page. Now, in the real world, etc., one of the first things a lot of pilots probably want to do is actually make sure that they're on the right plane matching the flight plan that they've been told they have or have in their possession. So they might actually check over here just to make sure the tail number matches. But normally with the IDENT, you want to double check that the model is correct. And we are indeed in the 777-300. Obviously, we now have a freighter. We're going to have the 200ER. So you'd see something different in the model. Likewise, you'd see something different in the rating. But in the 300ER, we have the big GEs, 115,000 pounds of thrust, on each of these engines. They are massive and they are powerful. You would double check that your nav data is correct and active. And as you can see, we have the active nav data. I want to point out here that you may not have the active nav data. That could be for a couple of reasons. The first one is maybe you don't have a Navigraph subscription. Now, if you don't, then you are dependent essentially on the navigation data that I believe PMDG last supplied. Or it could be the one in the sim. I'm not positive, mostly because I have a Navigraph subscription. I haven't tried it without it. Now, if you have a Navigraph subscription, but it's still out of date when you look at the active date, you have a great new, and I say new, it's newer, way to get your Navigraph data updated without leaving the sim. And that's by going to what PMDG calls the UFT, the Universal Flight Tablet, and what the rest of us call the EFB, the Electronic Flight Bag. And if you come over there, you can come to the little database symbol. Interestingly, it says here, you do not have current Navigraph navigation data. Without this, many features of the tablet and aircraft cannot operate optimally. And it encourages me to download it. But meanwhile, as you saw, we do have the updated data. But regardless, we could have it reinstall it. This is what you would do. If it was out of date, you'd have it updated. So you would just click on that. And as you can see, it'll run the nav update right here in the sim. Okay. All right, so we have the up-to-date nav data. Now, you may see here you've got a drag factor and a fuel factor. Now, in the real world, the maintenance department would adjust this based on particular criteria for plane age, etc., or if I guess they had observed some particular issue or history with a plane where it needed modification. In practice, you could modify this, but for our purposes, that's well beyond the scope of what we would do here. So we're just going to go ahead and assume maintenance has done this, because we're really focusing right now on what you would do in a typical line flight scenario. Now, the Boeing FMC really makes it simple to get all of the information that you need to get into the FMC without sort of jumping around through the various option buttons. Okay? It will walk you, or it will try its best to walk you through all of the pre-flight steps. And it does this by presenting the next step you have to take at the bottom right on 6 right, your LSK 6 right, for what the next step is. And in this case, it says POS INIT. And as you can see right below here on what's called the scratch pad, because this is just a message, it can be erased, it says enter inertial position, which is something we need to do. We need to confirm with the plane where it is, because if you remember, we started the ADARU, and so the process of alignment has already begun, and essentially it's already done because it's been many minutes. So now we have to confirm with it where it is. So we can clear that. And you notice when I clear that, scratch pad is empty, and I could type something in here if I want. Okay. So next we would go to POS INIT. POS INIT's very important. Okay? You will not have an enjoyable flight if you don't tell the plane where it is. Okay? Now, the first thing that it presents you with is its last known position. This, in the sim, it's not actually going to show you its last known position. It's really going to show you where you've spawned the plane. But hypothetically, if you were flying this on the line and you saw something out of whack with the last position, it might be something to take a look at. At this point, we can enter the airport because it's, again, this is the reference airport. Now, notice here there are dash lines. When you see the dash line, though that is information that is not required, it's not saying it's not advisable or it's not preferable or it's not appropriate, but it's not required. Nevertheless, for a sanity check, it makes sense to put this information in. So we are at KSFO. When we put this in, it's going to give us a set of coordinates that the navigation database has as to the location of the airport. And I think it's usually just a center point. So you can see here, sanity check. Last known position, almost identical to the airport position. Now, before we come in here and set the inertial position, I just want to note something. Look at the primary flight display, PFD, and the navigation display. And you'll notice right now there's no position indications. Not even a heading indication. So keep in mind, it's waiting for that pause in it. By the way, if you notice here where it says time to align, the inertial reference system alignment has already happened. It's done, but it's not complete until you've entered the pause in it. So when it's asked you to set the inertial position, notice here that these are boxes. The boxes are required information. Now, simplest thing to do is to use the plane's GPS position, because GPS is highly accurate and the plane has multiple GPS systems on board, and you can use that to set the pause in it. I'm sorry, the inertial position. So all you have to do, you don't have to type it in. This is where the Boeing FMC is quite easy to use. It has the idea that you can line select down to the scratch pad. So I click on it, and now that data is in the scratch pad. If I now come to 5 right and click on it, it's going to take the data from the scratch pad and insert it. Aha, and we have set the position. The next thing you want to make sure is that the time is correct. Notice the UTC time here. You want to make sure that's correct. Okay, now notice on the PFD we have information. We have a heading. It knows we're at KSFO. It's telling us there's some traffic around, which is interesting because I don't think I have any traffic turned on. Or do I? Oops. Oh well, guess I had that on. Okay, let's ignore that for the moment. My bad. That's what you call a panel state error. All right, now we've done this page. Notice how up here it says it's page 1 of 3. But Boeing is trying to tell you where to go. And it's not telling you to go to page 2 or page 3 of pause in it. It's telling you to go to route. That's what it's putting down here at 6R. Okay? So we really want to go to route. You might be saying, okay, but what's on page 2? All right, well, here's some pause reference material. So we have GPS position, inertial position, another GPS position. Notice here the FMC says it's using GPS. And then we have additional information on GPS left, right, FMC left, FMC right. Right now it's noting FMC right as primary, and normally you'd have FMC left as primary, but I'm not going to worry about that this second for this tutorial. Okay, so we're back where we were, and it wants us to go to route now. Okay, So now we're getting to the point where the plane knows where it is, and now it wants you to tell it where we're going and how. And that's where the route comes in, not surprisingly. So we have an origin and we have a destination. Note, those are required boxes. And we have a flight number, which is an optional box. And we have what's called a company route. It's also an optional box. So our origin, as we discussed, is KSFO. And we are going to Denver. Now we're going to Denver International, which is Kilo, Delta, Echo, November, and we will put that in. So now it has an origin and a destination. All else, at least it knows generally where it's going. All right, so now I have brought in our flight plan so you can see what that looks like. This is the flight plan that I did in SimBrief. I'm using what is the default flight plan format in SimBrief, which is the Lido flight plan format. Some love this flight plan, some hate it. I've actually been using Delta more recently, but since this is likely to look more familiar to most of you, this is what I use for this. So we have a flight number here, and we'll just put that in, and that's going to be UAL 100 Tango, and I've gone ahead and put that in. I just called it 100 TT for test. Now at this point, hypothetically, as we mentioned, you could activate, but let's go to page 2 here, because we're going to start actually putting in more details of our route. So let's scroll down our flight plan here and have a look at that. So here is the defined route. And this is what it's anticipating for us, at least at the moment, that we would take off on runway 28 right. We would depart on the Truckin' 2 standard instrument departure, or SID, and then we'll go to Syra and so on. And eventually we'll come into Denver on the Ski 3 star and into runway 26 at Denver. Okay. Now, the route itself is this section here. This piece over here is your departure, right? And this piece over here is your arrival. And what you're going to notice is that this is the route. Okay. But, and there's a separate indicator here for route as a task, but there's also departure and arrival. So the first thing we're going to start with is this piece. We'll put in the departure and arrival after this. So our first waypoint that we have is Syra, right? So it's Sierra, Yankee, Romeo, Alpha, Hotel. And the indicators for this are that it is direct to that point coming off of the SID. There's no airway in there. So as a consequence, the waypoint goes on the right-hand side, the 2. And if there's an airway, that'll be on the left-hand side, the via. So let's put Syra in at the top. Now our next point is Jessica. But if you notice, we have Q128 between that. Q128 is an airway. So we want to put that in the left-hand side, Q128. And since this is going to be after Syra, it's going to go on line 2. Now notice what happened when we did that. The right-hand side now has a box. because it wants to know where on the airway we're going to. Because normally in an airway, there are multiple points. So you can see it says 2, and then it says Q1. Notice they even put in the word then. Okay, so our next point is Jessica. So that's Juliet, right? Sierra, India, Charlie, and Alpha. Okay, pretty straightforward. Notice the next point is a direct point. DCT is for direct. And we're going to Ludo. Okay, so we'll put that in. Now again, no airway here, so we can just put it in on the right-hand side. And then we have another direct to bump. All right, so that's all of the route materials that we have at this point. Okay, now you could at this point execute this because maybe you're waiting for a clearance, you don't have it yet, not exactly sure which runway you're taking off on. Maybe you just want to get some of this in so that you're moving it along. Okay, now a lot of the SOPs, well, I say a lot, I don't know, I've only seen a few. So again, I don't think there's 100%. Yeah, we're definitely doing it this way or not. We're going to activate here or not activate here, but for our purposes, we're going to be following a particular procedure. So we're going to activate it, and notice when I hit activate, down on the line select key, the execute button now has a light. So it's waiting for us to execute. So at that point, we wanted to execute it. We've checked it. Looks okay. Hit execute. Okay? Now, we would move from this and we would go and do the departure. And we will take a look and see what we're going to be doing there. So let's get departure. And on our flight plan, it's telling us 28 right. For sake of argument at the moment, let's assume that's what it's going to be. Okay? So we will go ahead and go and select 28 right. So notice how I started with the runway, not the instrument departure. Because when you select the runway, it's going to filter the SID list for those departures that apply to the runway. As you can see on our flight plan, it says we're going to be on Truckin' 2. If you look on the left, we have the SIDs, but you don't see Truckin' 2, right? But if you look up here, it does say page 102. So there's more. So if you notice, we have a previous page and a next page option. So we'll hit next page, and now we can see there's Truckin' 2. So I'm going to select Truckin' 2, and now we have a question. Whoops, I'm sorry. I always end up doing that at least 3 times during this process. Here we go. What is our transition? Ooh, notice in our flight plan, we have Syra. And we have an option here for a transition at Syra. So our transition is Syra. Okay? And we're going to go ahead. If you notice now, it's giving us an option to execute that. We'll execute it. And now that is in our flight plan. At this moment, you do not necessarily have to put your arrival in. I personally, and I think this is true of some carriers because they get the stuff uplinked to them regardless, I like to put it in. You decide. So if we were going to have, I'm sorry, go back to the index here. And the index takes us so we can see the arrival. We'll do the arrival. We're going into Denver. Now, if we brought up Navigraph here, we could look at all the different arrivals. Okay, but just to simplify things, let's just say we're going to land ILS 26. Our star is Ski 3, and we'll just leave it there. Okay, we've got that in our flight plan now. So now, if you want to look and see what's happened on the route page, because I added this stuff that didn't make any difference. Let's go back to route. Notice now we have 4 pages of route. And notice it's got the truck and 2 with the Syra transition in. And then comes along and we've got Jessica and Ludo, etc. But notice we have this box here. Interesting. Notice that what is happening is there's a discontinuity. Now, mind you, it's not fatal, and some discontinuities are completely normal. You don't have to fix a discontinuity in the route page, although in theory you could. And you don't necessarily have to fix every discontinuity either. But regardless, you can now see that we have our route. So now, if we go back to the first route page, it tells us what the next, since our route is set, it tells us what the next step in the pre-flight procedure in the CDU is, and it's on the 6 right line select key, which is PERF INIT. All right, so this is the performance initialization page. And what we are going to do here is fill in the information that we need, some of which is going to come from our flight plan. And actually, I guess, let me correct that. All of it's going to come from the flight plan. But let's get that done. So one of the things that happens in the real world, of course, is that weight, payload, and fuel are added by boarding passengers, putting bags and cargo on, and adding fuel. And the information about that loading eventually turns into a load sheet that is either could be literally handed to the pilots, certainly for confirmation. In a lot of the modern versions, they'll have all of that information uploaded to them as well. But regardless, all of that will be happening. In the PMDG, frankly, most of that's up to you. So what we want to do to keep this in a situation where our pre-flight piece makes sense, let's go back up here for a minute and have a look at what the flight plan believes we will be carrying, both in the way of payload and in the way of fuel, and get that into the plane so that we can finish this process. So we're going to jump away from PERF INIT for a moment, and we're going to do some PMDG-isms here. So we're going to go on the menu, and we're going to go to FS Actions. And we're going to go to Fuel. And on our flight plan over here, it tells us that the recommended block fuel is 27,813 tons, and this is in kilograms. So, I have this showing in pounds, of course. So let me just fix that. Hang on a second here. We're going to go to... So for this, we go to the PMDG setup, and we go to the aircraft, and we go to displays. And on display 1, you can see we have pounds or kilograms. So for the moment, let's put it back in the kilograms, because that's what I did the flight plan in, even though I know it's the United States, and we probably would have put it in pounds. So you can see we're back at the PERF INIT page, and let me just re-grab our flight plan. Okay, so Our fuel was 27,813. So let's come back and we'll go to FS Actions. We'll go to Fuel, and we're going to do 27813. Okay, so I've got that in the fuel section now. Let's go back and we'll go to payload. And notice for our payload, we have an estimated zero fuel weight. So the zero fuel weight is the weight of the plane with passengers and baggage and cargo, but excluding fuel. Okay? So for this one, it's telling us we should expect 209,708. So that's basically 209.7 for purposes of inputting it here. Notice there's a zero fuel weight line up on two right, and I've entered that. So now we have our weight and fuel, and the way, zero fuel weight and fuel, and PMDG just sort of does its own deal in terms of how it distributes most of that. You could tinker with that if you want. You could go into passengers and cargo, but for our purposes, we're focusing on the FMC point and not the how to load the plane. So we'll come back over here. Let's get back into the FMC. All right. Now, we had a zero fuel weight, which was 209.7. Now, the way PMDG tries to simplify this is if you don't know what the zero fuel weight is, or you want it to be, make sure it matches whatever's in the FMC, what you're going to do is line select the zero fuel weight, even though it's empty, and you'll notice it adds 209.7 down below. Press it again, and now it's in the system. Remember, on the zero fuel weight, those were white boxes, so you've got to put something in there. Reserves is next. This is one that trips people up on this flight plan. So the reserves should be your final reserves plus your alternate. And they actually put it in the flight plan, but people spend a lot of time looking at it through here and trying to guess what's going on. It's really FinRes plus alternate. In some other flight plans, they just put the number you need to put into the box, which frankly is a lot simpler. So we have 7,604, but as you can see, the way this is set up, it's not expecting you to put 7,604. It's expecting you to put 7.6. So we just put that in, and you got it. The next thing we have is a cruise altitude. And on this flight plan, it puts the cruise altitude up here. It's sort of all over the place sometimes. But anyway, cruise altitude is 370, which is all you have to put in here. You just put in 370. And notice it made it flight level 370 because you will be working in standard baro at that point. So you'll be at a flight level, not an altitude. Next would be the cost index, which the flight plan puts up here, CI 166. All right, so we'll put in 166. Incidentally, I don't remember the exact max on the 777 off the top of my head. I have to go look that one up. Sorry. It varies a little bit from Boeing plane to Boeing plane. All right, now we have the PERF INIT page, and it's filled. So one thing that you may notice if you fly the 737 is that you don't have to execute the PERF INIT page in the 777. You've entered it, it's done. Once again, it's sending us along to our next spot in the FMC, which is the thrust limit. Now, we will go to the thrust limit, but the question you might have now is, what am I doing with it? Ooh, good question. Good question. Well, in most of the CDU pre-flight procedures, they will also have a performance calculation procedure. And that'll either be part of the procedure or kind of a separate procedure. But seeing as how they kind of go hand in hand, we're going to do it together. Okay? Now, how are we going to do this? Well, there are some options. SimBrief includes options to have it calculate performance. But I think most of us would rather have the PMDG performance calculator do most of the work for us because it's very simple. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So let's come over here, and you notice our route's in here now. I'm just going to request the route data from SimBrief. It's the same route data. Okay. Now we're going to come over here and go to Performance Tool, and we're going to do a takeoff performance. The way PMDG does this, it's fairly simple. I don't recommend importing the airport information from PMDG. From the operational flight plan from SimBrief. Just go to the runway ID, okay, and select 28 right. That was our option. Then what I have it do in terms of the aircraft configuration, I just have it imported from the aircraft rather than from the OFP, just in case we had to change something or the aircraft is looking at it a little bit differently. The next thing I have it do is import the weather. Now in my case, I have the weather reference as the sim weather, which I find, because that's what you're flying in. So I put the sim weather in. And I see it has our wind, 310 and 11. Has the OAT, 19. Has QNH, 30.27. We've told it for the flap configuration we want optimum. Same for the thrust rating, that our anti-ice would be off and that the air conditioning would be on auto. This is pretty standard. Now, the PMDG calculator has kind of its favorite outcomes, so I'm not going to fuss too much about it, but we'll just have it calculated. Okay, so the acceleration height, that 1500, there's default acceleration height that is set by livery. You can change that. So obviously this one was set to 1500. We're actually, when we do this, we'll set it to 1000 just to show you how to do it. It's telling us flaps 5. It's telling us the N1 rating at any 87.9. Note we won't be directly setting this number in the thrust limit page. It's telling us what the engine rating is going to be. You could have takeoff. You could have takeoff 1, which is a D-rated takeoff, and takeoff 2, which is even a further D-rated takeoff. And then, depending on your setting in the FMC, you can also have it do a selected temperature. And essentially, it's kind of a way of trying to fool the computer into thinking it's hotter outside. Regardless, it's got this temp for 46, and it's telling us how we're going to set the takeoff trim. And then, of course, it has the all-important V1, VR, and V2 numbers. And it also has VREF, and then it's reaffirming what it thinks our takeoff weight will be. So I think that's, it's fairly straightforward, I think, and we'll take that over to the thrust limit page and we'll adjust that. Okay, so let's go back to the FMC over here. All right, on the thrust limit page, if you recall now, we had a takeoff 2. So if you have a cell temp and you have a takeoff D rating, you need to set the takeoff D rate first. Otherwise, it'll get confused. So it's takeoff 2, and it told us the cell was 46. All right, and now let me just double check that. 46, yes, 46. So it's telling us our N1 was going to be 87.9. Notice the FMC doesn't exactly match that. That's just one of those little quirks that I think you see in here with some frequency. It's not a big deal. You can just sort of move on from that. Okay, we've set that now. And now we're going to go to the takeoff page. A piece of advice. there are 2 pages to the takeoff reference page. If you're going to make some changes, and you might, you want to start on page 2. Okay? So on page 2, there are a couple of things you might change. And they mostly relate to the right-hand side. So let me come back for just a moment here. Note, you can enter the wind. Okay? You can enter if there's a slope on the runway. You can enter if it's dry or wet. But you've essentially already done that when you did the performance calculations. You don't have to put it in again, nor do you have to put the referenced outside air temperature. However, you might want to change the engine out acceleration height, the acceleration height, and the thrust reduction height. So engine out acceleration height, right? That's the height above the origin airport, so that's above ground level, at which VNAV would command acceleration in the event of an engine failure. I see 800 a lot. I've also seen 1,000. I mean, it's just all over the place. So for sake of argument, let's say we're going to make it 1,000, okay? Because we're going to make all of these 1,000. Then we have acceleration height. So that's the height above the airport at which VNAV will command acceleration with both engines operating. Now, when you think about that, what it really means is we're going to start speeding up after takeoff. So the nose will pitch down a little bit from the takeoff attitude, and we'll start to pick up speed, and then we'll start to retract the flaps, etc. Okay, and then we have the thrust reduction altitude. Okay, so that's the altitude at which the takeoff thrust is reduced down to the selected climb thrust. Okay, a flap setting can also be used. But you'll notice here that we'll be looking at climb 2, which makes sense since we had a derated takeoff. All right, so let's go back to the first page. Now let's remember, what did we have? One of the things that's nice in the 777 is if you don't remember what all you had, they got a little shortcut so you can look at the EFB. If you click where it says Boeing 777, voila, you have the creepy hand. Sure. But anyway, it's handy because it does have our information that we want. So where you have a flaps 5 takeoff. Now, the CG. You could go and look at the CG. You could go back to the payload page. But much like with the zero fuel weight option in the PERF INIT page, if you click on this, even though it's empty, it'll give you the number down in the scratch pad, and you can put it in. There we go. So we have CG, and lo and behold, it's set what the preferred takeoff trim is, which is 4.75. All right. Now we have our V1, VR, V2 numbers. Note, they're very similar, ever so slightly different. We have 152 from the performance calculator, and we have 156, and we have 161. Now note, I'm entering and pressing each of these, even when the reference number is here, because we want to make these big. When you make something big, it means you've entered it. Okay, so for these entries, so you want to know that when it's something that is very important, like your takeoff references. So of course, I think that just a reminder, your V1 is your decision speed. So you don't reject a takeoff above V1. You might not have enough runway to stop if you did. So you've hit V1, you're taking off. VR is your rotation speed. So that's when you're going to rotate into the air. And then V2 is like your safety speed. It's sort of your minimum speed that's required that you need to maintain up to the acceleration altitude. particularly in the event of an engine failure after V1. Okay. Now, let's get rid of the extra creepy hand because no, I don't want to see that. Okay. If we go back now and have a look, we have completed the pre-flight process that is required. Okay? However, and this is where things get interesting. The 777 is obviously a long hauler. And there's some information that you might want to have in your FMC because it can really affect your fuel burn and performance. And one of those is the wind. If you noticed when we were on the PERF INIT page, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, there's no wind information here. The 737 does take some wind information, or you can put in a general wind. You can also add specific wind at different locations, but okay. In the 777, you really want those winds. And you can put winds in. Okay? So I went to the legs page, and this shows you all of the waypoints that we have. Okay? Well, let's say we want to add the winds. So that's part of the route data, and as you can see here, there's a column that says wind. And you'll notice here we don't have any winds. So and when you're getting a little caret here, it's basically telling you it doesn't have any winds. We can get winds from our flight plan, of course. I mean, there are winds that are offered in the flight plan. Okay, I want to bring our flight plan back up, but of course I'm having a little trouble seeing it. There we go. So if we scroll down, have a look, you can see that there are, you got some wing, you got wind at the altitude that it expects that you'll be at that time. See the winds here? And it's also got winds at different levels for each of your main points. And so you could, if you wanted, let's say at Jessica, I could say for, I don't know, altitude 330, I'm going to have a wind that's going to be 350 at 5.6, and I think it's telling me it's got the temperature. I could put in minus 5.2 here. It's going to be, oh, I got an invalid entry. See, even I can't remember. Maybe it's just 5.2. Oh, I know what. Okay, sorry. I forgot to execute. Okay, so you can see that I put some winds in. Now you could add more. I could add additional altitudes. I could add it at different locations. Go back and look at the route data. You can see now we do have some winds in there, at least from Jessica. So, okay. And if we look actually on the points that go past Jessica, you'll notice it inherits whatever I put in after Jessica. However, and here we're going to have a little cheat from our friends at SimBrief. As you noticed, when I was at the EFB, I imported the SimBrief information. Okay? And if I come back here, I can go to wind data request, and it will pull that wind data from SimBrief. Notice it has it ready for us. I don't actually want to load the data right this second. We'll do that in the next round when we do the fully automated approach. But, okay, here we are. But if we come now to FMC COM, you can see that we have a wind uplink ready. Let's have a look at that. I can come here. I want to load it. All right, well, I'll just load it. It's fine. Okay, so we've loaded it. And then it will also give you, so this is the winds en route, but it also offers a descent forecast if you want that you can also request from SimBrief. And just like on the other one, here we go, there's a descent forecast. So I purged it because we're not going to put it in right now. All right, so that's some additional information that you could put in. Now, you can also do things that will help you with situational awareness if you like. So, you know, we've got a takeoff, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and maybe you want to track, you know, something like you want to put in a range ring, or you want to put in a course. You want something handy, you want references to show up on the navigation display. The 777 can do all of that. It can do you can have 4 different fixed locations with all kinds of different things for those. We can get into that later. But in terms of your pre-flight work, you've done it. So the CDU pre-flight work is complete. Now, I'm going to do this again a little faster. This time, we're going to do it in the PMDG automated way. Here we go. Here's where PMDG makes things relatively simple. When you come in, and you can do this right from the beginning, you can go right to DFB, you can request your SimBrief data. Once you have your SimBrief data, you can come to here. Once you've done the, you need to do your POS INIT still. You need to do your IDENT and your POS INIT page. But when you come to the route page, you can go under route request, and notice it's got SimBrief route. Notice that's in green. It means it thinks it's a valid flight plan and everything's okay. And if you click on that, it will now give you 3 options. Okay. Way that I find it easiest to do is 1, I let it set my payload. Notice it says SimBrief payload is set. 2, and I do this slowly. Don't press the buttons. Don't mash the buttons. Don't invite a WASM crash, but just wait a moment. Set the fuel, and it tells you the SimBrief block fuel is set. Now I select the route. Notice at this point it says route requesting. Okay, that's what we want. And it's sent. And now you wait a little bit. Here we go. Route uplink. Now you have a couple of choices here. Say you don't want the route uplink. You could purge it. But for our purposes, let's assume we do want it. We're going to load it. All right. Notice it's even put in a company route. I mean, it's only because it's predetermined from the SimBrief route. But okay. All right. And it said it was loading. Now it's uploaded. But before we just activate it, why don't we take a moment and look at it? Because you want to confirm that what you got from SimBrief is correct. SimBrief is not infallible. PMDG parsing of SimBrief is not infallible. I mean, something could go wrong. So I find it best to check that. I'm just clearing these messages slowly. Okay. Now let's take a look. We'll go to page 2. Hey, that looks like the one we put in. Syra, Q128, Jessica, direct Ludo, direct bump. Great. Activate, execute. Now, what it will not do is import your runways, okay? Because it assumes you're going to get clearance, etc. So we were doing 28 right, and we were going on the truck in 2, and we were going to Syra, and we're going to execute. Okay, we've got that. And our arrival, we were going to be ILS 26, and we were going to go on the ski 3, and we were going to go into bump. Okay. All right. Now, go back and look at our route. We got that all set up. Okay. So now the next thing you would do is you would go to your PERF init. Now when you do the PMDG uplink, you'll note that it's filled in some of this for you. Let me warn you now. I have seen some very odd numbers, particularly in the reserves here. So you want to double check that flight plan and make sure that the numbers match. Now, in our case, 7.6, 370, 166, they do match. So we'll go ahead and those are the user input values except for the 0 fuel weight, which we'll do in a moment. So we're going to accept the PERF init data. Okay, notice it got big. So we're all set there. 0 fuel weight, we're going to do the same thing we did before. All right, and then on the thrust limit, it looks like it actually did remember that for some reason. I don't know why. And then it shouldn't be remembering this. I think it should have wiped all of this out, but whatever. Here we go. This was 152, 156, 161. Those were the numbers. And then if you remember, we made 1,000, 1,000, 1,000. So those are all done. So then, as I mentioned, we can come over to here and use SimBrief to load our wins. Wonderful. We can execute that. And we can come to the descent forecast and we can load those. Voila. Don't have to execute on those. Okay, now you've got a plane that's happy. One of the things that you can look at, and I think it's useful, and I recommend that you do it, is to go to the progress page and have a look at what it thinks is going to happen, right? So do some sanity checking here. Do the track miles make sense? Okay. Do the fuel numbers match up at all to your fuel plan within reason? Those are things that you want to check. There's lots of interesting stuff in the progress page as you're going along too, by the way. So when you're up in the air, you can get your wins, cross-track error, other things that you might find useful, and of course get your calculated and your totalized fuel. So I mean, there's a lot of information in here. We haven't even looked at some of the pages like Navrad. Notice it auto-tuned the local VOR. It's a very powerful FMC. It's very smart. It's in many ways, it's highly automated, which is great. And then you've got VNav, by the way. So this is where you can look at things like which climb profile is going to look like, cruise profile, descent profile. So, what's it telling you? Well, below 250, but below 10,000, we're going to have a speed limit of 250. We're going to climb at 320 knots or 0.837 Mach, depending on how high up we are, of course. And then, when we're at cruise, we have a cruise speed. There could be, well, it's not recommending any step, so okay. Notice here our recommended level is 370. Recommended should be taking into account the winds. Optimal isn't necessarily doing that. Max, of course, is, as it suggests, max. Notice the step climb value, it's RVSM, reduced visual separation. And so that should give you a step of 2,000. And then we'd have our descent. And again, you can look and see, so above 10,000, it's going to be descending at indicated airspeed at 314 or 0.838 Mach, depending on where we are, etc. And you'll notice when you're actually doing it, it will tell you things like flight path angle and some other things. So there's a lot going on in there, a lot of information, a lot of feedback that you can have. All right, so we have completed the CDU pre-flight procedure. This was a long one. It's a fun one. I really like the Boeing FMC. For me, it is better than the Airbus one. I find it to be more intuitive, and I started with Airbus, so it was a little bit of a transition. But boy, once I got there, I realized, what have I been doing all this time? And we'll talk more about sort of the usefulness of some of those as we go along and what we're looking at, particularly using this legs page. You're going to spend a lot of time with legs page when you're up in the air. But right now, for the pre-flight piece, it's not as important. Okay. If you enjoyed this content, please please subscribe. It really lets me know who's out there, who's taking an interest. If you have questions, and if you're new to this and you watched all of it and you don't have any questions, you missed something. So feel free to ask in the comments, or you can seek me out in Discord, IAD Bound. I'm on the PMDG Discord, for example. So I hope to see you all very soon.